the things I wanted to talk to you about are because, especially since you've been doing this for such a long time, I wanted to hear your insight on kind of what the root problem is. Like, what is causing this mental health crisis to your mind? And also, have you seen a shift between before COVID and after COVID?
Yep. I was actually going to use COVID as the example. That's funny. Because you remember when COVID happened, like we were all panicking in the beginning. Fear
Yeah.
ran the world. And
Hmm.
my perspective personally, as a public speaker, when they said no more traveling, stay away from people, was that my job is over. Right.
Yeah.
But my son, who was 3 at the time, was having the best time of his life. He was happier during COVID than he was before COVID. I mean, he's running around the house, happy Batman cape. And I'm thinking, like, great for him, right? The
Right.
world's in panic and he's just playing.
Yeah.
But that's the power of perspective, right?
Yeah.
From my perspective, it was panic. From his perspective, me not traveling meant I could stay home and we could play more.
Yeah.
So I had a decision. I was like, I'm going to continue to look at my life as panic, or I could change my position, get closer to my son, shift my perspective, be a better father. And so I
Yeah.
chose that, did the same with my wife. I became a better husband, and we got closer as a family during COVID. So at first, I felt bad saying that, right? Because people are going through terrible things during COVID. That is
Yeah.
also a reality, right? But I started to talk to people, and people were like, to be honest, Jared, even the terrible things that happened during COVID, there were some things that I had to face. And one of those things was my thoughts and my feelings. I've been so busy with work and distracting myself with everything else that when they told us we can't come to work anymore and I'm sitting at home just twiddling my thumbs, I finally had to face some of the feelings from my childhood that I had suppressed for 30 years. I can't tell you how many people told me that they started taking their mental health and their physical health serious because of COVID,
Yeah.
because of COVID. And so I'm not saying it's a good thing. I was just saying that I decided to pick out the good things that came out of it for me personally. And I started to talk about that with people. Like, what were the things that came out of this that you could learn from and become a better person for? And that was definitely one of them. After COVID happened, there was a huge demand for our services, mental health services. I
Yeah.
mean, there was grants, there was budgets, even in Texas, out of all places, they finally said, you know what, this is important. And
Yeah.
so we started getting indoors that we had been slammed in our face before, so I just saw that as an opportunity for us to have a reset, hit the reset button and say, hey, this is important and we do need to talk about it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I think the first question that you asked is what started the mental health crisis. And I think it would be suppression. We never dealt with it.
Yeah.
Suppressed emotions over time becomes depression, but over more time, and you probably know, it becomes sickness, illness, and disease.
Yeah.
Because suppressed emotions cause stress causes inflammation. Inflammation is the beginning of like all sickness ever,
Yeah.
right? So,
Right.
so I mean, there's problems, and we have this, increase of um, autoimmune diseases, right? My wife had one for 28 years. She went through trauma focused therapy, healed. Even in her blood work, ANA levels, everything's gone. She's
Yeah.
been physically healed because she healed mentally from her traumatic childhood experiences, and she had a handful of them. She had a lot.
Yeah. It is crazy. And I feel like people kind of think that's kind of woo-woo when we say that, but like
Yeah,
where it's
yeah.
not just, it's like literally there's like cortisol is a real chemical in our brains. Like it's measurable. There are things that are measurable that we can look at. And in my life, I have had one migraine, and it happened after I've got ADHD, and I was trying to use a new medication that was like based on like, it was, oh gosh, I forget what it's called, but it basically was like a serotonin based one where it was like trying to regulate that. And I stopped taking it suddenly. And so I had a dip in that. And then it was incredibly stressful weekend. My car got broken into. My husband graduated, and I was navigating all of these things. And I had like a horrific migraine that was 100% caused because I screwed with my brain chemistry and
Yeah.
then got very stressed. And the cortisol levels in my brain just like firestorm. And I had the worst migraine of my life. I had never experienced that before. And I don't know if you've seen Inside Out too. I'm assuming you
Oh
have,
yeah.
given, of
Oh
course,
yeah.
right? And the way that they depicted a panic attack in that movie, and because I've had panic attacks before. I thankfully don't get them much anymore. But that movie does such a good job of pointing out the way that even kids who have like a good home, like I think that's another misconception is like kids who have trauma, like they had to have had just the worst home environment ever. And I'm like,
The environment here.
yeah, it's the environment in their heads. And sometimes our brain thinks something is danger. Like it's the same chemicals, right? Like our brains are getting flooded with like the fight or flight chemicals, even when like they're not in physical danger, but their brains feel like they are. And we, as educators, we end up having to deal with a kid who's like not wanting to put their phone away. And you're like, can you put your phone away? And they overreact, just explosively overreact, just like an Inside Out 2 where the girl's like screaming at her mom, like, God.
Yeah.
And you're just like, what is happening? And like their brain is literally in survival mode. And we know logically that like this is not life or death, but maybe to them it feels like it because they don't know if their mom has woken up yet this morning from their bender last night, or they haven't heard from their dad and, he was flying somewhere and they're really worried about that. And now you're taking away their one way of kind of making that connection again. And I think that, it's so hard for us to always have the kind of empathy that is required when we're dealing with kids whose brains are just so raw with emotion, you know? Thank you so much for watching. Want more of Those Who Can't Do in your life? Well, you can watch the full episode right now. Just click on that little box over there. You see it? Right down there? There it is. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe. Okay, bye.